Welcome back to another video, everybody. Today we're going to be going over all the monsters in Pillar Chase 2. This is going to be a complete breakdown, and while it is for new players to get an understanding of the killer, this is not going to be tips on the killers, so if you came for that, I'm sorry. As much as I'd love to give tips on the killers, I don't exactly know how to play all the killers myself, so I can't actually provide that. So we're going to get into the video and break down all the killers. Before I do that, I just want to announce that I've opened my own Discord server, and it's a community server for everybody to chat and have fun and play games, so I hope you guys join that, and I hope we can have fun. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Now, it is worth mentioning that the gameplay in the background is outdated because it was from the patch previous to the one out right now, so just keep that in mind that it's not up to date because this is from different patch notes where the killers had different stats. However, everything I'm going to talk about is going to be up to date, so just don't worry about the gameplay. It's there for entertainment. And we're going to start off this video with Vapor. Vapor is a big red butt baby, and his model was inspired by a horror game called Vapor with an U after the O from 2013. You can see the resemblance from the original and the Pillar Chase 2 model from the picture on screen. And in regards to his chase music, he doesn't have any. He's just really loud with his ambient sound. And when you initiate chase, instead of the music, it just initiates a jump scare. That, for some reason, sets you back in place. I don't know if that's a bug or not, but it's pretty annoying and it kind of helps him out. But in terms of gameplay, he does 70 damage per hit, he has a sprint speed of 18, and he has 135 stamina. His first ability is Spider Skull Summon. You'll stop in place to summon a Spider Skull and it will chase the nearest player on the map. Spider Skull can be destroyed by survivors if they spam E on it. The spiders actually have a low chance to run away once you hit them. Your next ability is Demonic Shift. When you're playing Vapor, you'll notice a red highlighted orb on the map. That orb is actually an anchor point for your teleport. The orb will highlight all players in its vicinity to you, and you'll be able to see them through the walls. The orb updates locations every 20 seconds or every time you use the ability. You can also use this ability when the Spider Skull is chasing a player, and it will teleport you to the Spider Skull instead of the orb. That feature is really strong for Vapor because it allows him to teleport on top of a player and get the hit off. He's heavy hitting, has simple abilities, and has high stamina, so it doesn't really require that much brain power in order to play him, making him a very good candidate for one of the free killers. Next is Rosemary, and unfortunately they don't really have anything that says where they originate from, so we're kind of just like an original character. Rosemary's chase music is the music playing in the background, and to jump into the gameplay, Rosemary does 30 damage per hit, 26 sprint speed, and 45 stamina. Rosemary has a passive ability called echolocation. Every time someone makes a sound within 105 studs of you, they're highlighted to you. And when echolocation activates, Rosemary will make an audible sound to the survivors nearby. The first active ability for Rosemary is Demonic Shriek. Rosemary leans their head back and shrieks loudly, blinding all the players nearby. This blind does 5 damage to the survivor, and it also regains your stamina if you hit somebody with it. A good use I found for this is using it in chase, and it gives you your stamina back so you can just keep pursuing them. One thing to note about this ability is that it doesn't go through walls, so keep that in mind. Rosemary's next ability is Sightless Essence. Rosemary looks down and emits a demonic essence that follows her around. If somebody is caught nearby the smoke or inside the smoke, their stamina will drain fast, and it will cause them to lose all their stamina and become winded. With Rosemary's very good speed, decent damage, and decent stamina, it makes them a really good killer for beginners, and it introduces beginners to fast characters. Next, we're moving on to Baldi. Baldi originates from the video game Baldi's Basics in Education and Learning, is owned by Mistman12. His chase music can be heard in the background, and for his gameplay, he does 45 damage per hit. It says he has a sprint speed of 74, but it's kind of off with Baldi because he starts out really slow and he starts to get faster over time. He moves with the slap of his ruler, and that speed over time will increase how many times he slaps, and he's the only killer in the game to have infinite stamina. Baldi's first ability is called Math. He drops down a notebook on the map, and any survivor that gets close to that notebook has to answer a math question. If they answer incorrectly, they're going to take a crap ton of damage, but if they answer correctly, they're just going to take a small amount of damage. On top of that, you also get a slight bit faster whenever a survivor takes the notebook and answers it correctly, and you gain even more speed when a survivor answers it incorrectly. Baldi's next ability is called Anti-Hearing Tape. He drops a tape player down on the map that plays a loud sound and masks the ruler's sound, so whenever you're slapping your ruler, it's completely silent to the survivors. If a survivor is near the tape, they'll also be highlighted to you in green. Baldi at the start of the round can be probably the hardest killer to play in the game, but once you get to the end of the round, it's smooth sailing from there. That's why I think Baldi is moderate, which is very close to beginner friendly, but just not quite there. Next up is Aooni. Aooni originates from a Japanese horror game originated as freeware in 2008. That game was developed by No Props and was first released in Japan. The name Aooni translates to blue demon in English apparently, even though he looks purple. like a purple butt baby. But his character is owned by Litmus Corporation or no props. As for chase music, it's playing in the background. And onto gameplay, he does 40 damage per hit, has 21 sprint speed, and has 100 stamina. For Oni vision, his vision turns purple and it highlights all the players on the map, as well as regenerating a lot of your stamina. It's good to use this in chase because it doesn't take away your ability to attack while you're regenerating the stamina, so you can out stamina a survivor and attack them. Out Oni's next ability is called Shapeshift, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Once you click the ability, a menu will pop up and you can select a player, and once you select that player, you will transform into them. While you're transformed into this player, you can press F on the keyboard to toggle your flashlight, and if you attack, you cancel the shapeshift early. One thing to note about the shapeshift though is that once you do transform into somebody, it's extremely loud and anybody around you is able to hear it. Out Oni is all about deception. Even though he hits slightly hard, he's just barely slower than a survivor, so he kind of struggles to catch up to them. Though if he does get on top of survivor, he can stay on them pretty well. Out Oni is definitely not the hardest to play, but he's also not the easiest. I think he's pretty moderate for beginners and they'll have a good time playing him. Next up is the Fogborn. Fogborn is a reference to the Man from the Fog, which is a Minecraft horror mod, and if you haven't played it, essentially when lightning strikes, the Man from the Fog spawns in, and if you stare at him, he gets aggro and he chases you down, and majority of the time he's gonna kill you because he just completely burns through builds. The Fogborn is another one of those killers that doesn't really have chase music. It's kind of just like ambient screams, so I put the chase music from one of his skins as the music right now, so that's what you're hearing. Some things to note about the Fogborn is that he has high stamina drain and his attack animation changes when crawling. As for his statistics, he does 30 damage per hit, he has 25 sprint speed, and he has 100 stamina. His first ability is Foggy Stare. You stand in place and whistle when you activate this, and if a player looks at you while it's active, you enter chase mode. When you're in chase mode, you get your stamina completely refilled and you move extremely fast. Your stamina drain, however, is increased while you're in chase mode, so keep that in mind. The Fogborn's next ability is called Thunder Warp. When you activate it, you go invisible and it highlights all the players on the map. It also gives you increased movement speed while you're in this. And if you press the ability button again, it's going to take you out of this form and you're going to have some small end lag before you can move again, and then you're able to run. This ability is mainly used to get around the map and catch up to survivors. While the Fogborn has high sprint speed, he also has high stamina drain, and it makes it kind of hard to play him, as well as his abilities also being very situational. I personally think this killer is not beginner friendly. You need to be intermediate, like you need to be good at the game in order to play this character. Next up is EXE, aka Faker. Faker is the main antagonist of a 2017 Sonic prototype game created by Raven, and his character was created and owned by Corvin03. His chase music is called Innocence, which is the instrumental of a Friday Night Funkin' song from the Sonic.exe mod. Faker's passive ability is called You Can't Hide, and every 11 seconds he sniffs out nearby players and it highlights them throughout the walls. Every time this does happen though, you play a loud sound for all the nearby survivors to hear. As for Faker's stats, he does 45 damage per hit, he has a sprint speed of 20, and he has 105 stamina. His first ability is called Too Slow, and when you press the ability button, you sprint forward extremely fast and grab the nearest player if you touch them. Once the player is grabbed, you'll do 10 damage for the grab and 40 damage for the bite, which in total causes 50 damage. Once EXE bites the survivor, he'll place him down, giving you some end lag as he wipes his mouth, giving the survivor a chance to get away. The next ability is called Thorny Grave, and you place down a trap that has a relatively small hitbox, and it stops any survivors that step on it. If a survivor steps on it, it will lock them in place and it will start to deal damage to them. On top of that, the survivor will be highlighted to you and you'll get a movement boost. If the trap is dormant and nobody stepped on it, survivors can hold E on the trap and get rid of it. The only thing that hurts this character in his kit is his slow speed, which causes you to have to make some big brain plays with your traps. This character isn't too hard to play, but he's definitely not the easiest, so I think he's pretty moderate for new players. Alright, so like moving forward on this point in the video, I lost all my footage somehow. Like I had footage of every single killer and it all despawned. So I'm kind of just going to be live in game saying the stuff. But next up is Uncle Samsonite. He's created by Jake Bowen TV. I'll play a clip right here of the video of Uncle Sam.
It's time to have some fun with Uncle Samsonite.
His chase music is going to be in the background as usual. For his stats, he does 50 damage per hit. He has a sprint speed of 19 and he has 100 stamina. His three abilities, his first one is Beat Laydown. When you press the button, you perform a dance and sprint faster. And while dancing, if anybody is around you, they have a dance meter that'll fill up slowly. If the dance meter reaches full, then the player is just going to be stuck in place dancing. They're not going to regenerate any stamina and they're just going to be stuck there. You can hold E on the player as they're dancing. You'll take them to your domain. We'll cover that in a second. Next up is Uncle's Wrath. You reel back and stomp in place, creating a large shockwave that hits a large AoE, which the AoE is pretty big, and it stops all players from sprinting, and your sprint speed will be increased for the duration of the time. It also causes players' dance meters to fill up drastically, like almost to full, so you could use that to your advantage with Beat Laydown. His next ability is Domain Traversal. If you press this button, then you're going to be teleported to his domain. Uncle Samson can use any of the doors in his domain to teleport to a random location on the map. And if you bring somebody into the domain, like I mentioned earlier, they're going to have to find one of 4 doors that'll actually take them out. In this domain, you're going to have infinite stamina. You're going to be moving just slower than a running survivor, but there's like no sprint. You're just at a set speed. And after Uncle Samson uses the domain traversal and leaves it, you can see all the players on the map for a short duration. This killer, in my opinion, is not very beginner friendly because you just need to learn how to manage your stamina with this killer, and it's kind of hard to play him. Next up, we got Springtrap. We don't need any introduction. He's from Scott Cawthon, Five Nights at Freddy's 3. That's where he comes from. His stats, he does 45 damage per hit. He has a sprint speed of 18. He has 110 stamina. His first ability is Ventilation Error. Any nearby players will come blinded, so their screen will flash black, and it'll just keep going like that for 11 seconds. Springtrap gains a little bit of stamina while he uses this ability, and his sprints is faster as well. His next ability is Phantom Walk. You just like become this little ghost form of yourself and you fly towards a player. If you land on top of that player, you give them the Fearful debuff, and if we go down here, the Fearful debuff lasts for 10 seconds and it adds 35 extra damage to any attack. You can press the ability button again to exit the Phantom Walk early, and his next ability is called Axe Toss. You stand in place and you just hurl the axe forward. It's just straightforward. There's no fall off, so keep that in mind. When you throw the axe, you're going to have to go retrieve it, but in that time where you can retrieve it, you have a punch that does 20 damage and you move faster. If you hit somebody with the axe toss, it also does a crap ton of damage, and your axe throw ability turns into a mechanical slam ability. And the mechanical slam ability, you like take a step forward and then you attempt to grab any nearby survivors. If you do manage to grab onto them, you slam them into the floor and deal a medium amount of damage. And again, this ability is only usable if you don't have your axe on you. This killer, in my opinion, is pretty beginner friendly. He's not too hard to get a grasp of, and he's pretty decent. Next up is MX. His character is owned by Razdazzle. He does 70 damage per hit. He has sprint speed of 24, and he has 70 stamina. His passive ability is called Bloodlust, and whenever you get a kill, you get multiple bonuses. It refreshes all your cooldowns, and it highlights all the players on the map. His first ability is called Charging Demise. You charge forward in a straight line, and if you hit people, you hit them multiple times, knocking them forward in your direction. If you run into a wall, however, where you're doing Charging Demise, you hit yourself against the wall and you become stunned for a little bit. You refill a small amount of stamina after hitting a wall, so keep that in mind. His next ability is called Pow Hop. You jump into the air and move extremely fast in whatever direction you're moving. Before you stomp down on the ground, the survivor is prompted with jump now. If they fail to jump, they're going to be stunned for a good few seconds. And if they do jump, then they're just going to proceed as forward, but it does use like 2 stamina. If you land directly on somebody with a Pow Hop, it's an insta-kill. This character is pretty intermediate because while he is very strong, you do still need to like learn some stamina management before you can play him. Other than that, he's fairly easy to play and he's not that hard. Next up is the Forest King. Their character is from Torchcast, Underway, SMW, and Medic. Sorry if I'm wrong here. I don't really know. They do 25 to 40 damage per hit. They're going to do 25 if you're sprinting, and they're going to do 40 damage if you're standing still or not sprinting. They have a sprint speed of 20, and they have 100 stamina. Their first ability is Glitched Blitz. You're going to shoot out a glitch, and it's going to go in a straight line and go through any wall. And if you hit somebody, they get hit with a glitch debuff. The glitch debuff covers the target's screen and the static effect and damages them over time slowly. That has actually been changed to damage them over time pretty fast, and it does a good amount of damage. Their next ability is called Lurking Facade. You stand in place and summon a floating head that follows the nearest player. If it collides with the player, it will spawn a glitchy route, and it will ensnare them in place in a certain vicinity, and they can't escape from it. Once the player is ensnared, Forest King gets a major speed boost for a short duration of time, allowing them to catch up to whoever's ensnared. If these Lurking Facade heads are near you, your screen will glitch out, and it will start saying him all over the screen, and it will slowly get towards you. This ability can also go through walls. I think the Forest King is pretty intermediate to play. They're not too hard to play, and they give you a good understanding of a trapper killer. Next up is Niloticus. He was made by Terolostyrix. Sorry if I got that wrong. He does 20 damage per hit. He has a 28 sprint speed and he has 42 stamina. His first ability is called Godly Leap. He leaps extremely far in the direction that he's facing, and he can grab the nearest player if he collides with them. If you collide with a player, you're going to bite them and it deals a small amount of damage, as well as apply the radiation debuff, which we'll get to in a second. His next ability is called Irradiated Mist. This spawns a puddle of radioactive mist and it lasts for around 30 seconds. If anybody steps in the puddle, then they're going to become with the irradiated debuff. And if you spawn a puddle, it also slightly increases the timer to give you back that time that you spent spawning the puddle. As for the irradiated debuff, it slowly damages you over time and blocks your screen with effects. You take extra damage with Niloticus's attacks, like a crap ton of extra damage. It highlights you through the walls for Niloticus to see you, and it only applies if you step in a puddle or step on a dead radiated body. or if he jumps on you with the Godly Leap. Niloticus, in my opinion, is intermediate to play as well, especially with his most recent buff, makes him really strong and really easy to play. Next up on the list is Wyst. It's kind of based off of Pac-Man, and it stands for weird yellow smiling thing. He does 35 damage per hit, he has 21 sprint speed, and he has 100 stamina. His first ability is called Gobble Bomb, and once you activate it, you stand in place and shoot out a bomb in the direction that you're facing. If it collides with somebody, it will explode and deal a lot of damage. If the ball is bouncing around towards you, you can melee it and make it explode early. And if your frenzy is active, you'll shoot 3 bombs instead of 1. And the next ability is a frenzy. You stand in place and start to charge up and go into your frenzy mode, and you get multiple buffs to your stats. You get an increased sprint speed and attack speed, and you also shoot 3 bombs instead of 1. Your stamina drain gets slightly increased as a trade-off, but if you kill somebody using your left mouse button, you're going to get an extended duration for your frenzy. Wyst, in my opinion, is very beginner friendly. His frenzy is extremely strong and it allows you to secure kills very easily. As well as aiming his bombs is not too hard because they have a huge AoE damage range. Next up is the Vita Mimic. He comes from the Vita Carnus series, which is a great analog horror series, by the way. You should go check it out. And it was created by Darian Quilloy. He does 15 to 30 damage per hit. He has a sprint speed of 21 and he has 100 stamina. His first ability is called Elder Ascension. You scream and then become almost completely invisible. You're just extremely dark and it's really hard to see you. Your footsteps and idle sounds are just extremely quiet, like borderline you can't hear it at all. And if you attack, you end this mode early. So Elder Ascension is basically invisibility. Your next ability is called Animalistic Instinct. You stand in place and make a sound, and then you can see any player that you're facing through walls within a certain range. And if a player is highlighted and you attack them, they get the bleeding debuff on them. And the Vita Mimic cannot sprint while using this ability. The bleeding debuff, it deals a high damage over time and lasts a short duration. And the Vita Mimic can see bleeding players through the walls. His passive is called Advanced Hunter. He deals extra damage to players who are alone, and his damage is increased each time with kills. Your damage cap's at 30, but also that extra damage when somebody's alone is also applied to that. In my opinion, I don't think Vita Mimic is very beginner friendly. I'd say more like pro level, but also intermediate level, because he is really strong if you know how to play him. But his stats aren't really helping him too much, and being the same speed as a survivor lets him keep up, but that 100 stamina isn't helping him too much. As well as his abilities kind of need to be used precisely. Except for Elder Ascension, you kind of just click that and run at somebody, but his Animalistic Instinct needs to be used precisely. So he's not that hard to play, but he's definitely not beginner friendly. Next up, we got Fuwadi. It's the small purple butt baby. It's made by the same people from Litmus Corporation or No Props. He does 30 damage per hit. He has a sprint speed of 21 and he has 95 stamina. His first ability is called Oni Vision, and it highlights all the players around the map and it regenerates a good amount of stamina. His next ability is called Silly Rush. You press it and you'll make a sound cue, and then you'll just charge forward in a straight line. If you hit a wall while charging, you'll be stunned for a duration of time. Like, you'll literally smack your head against the wall and then fall over and then get back up. You can aim your Silly Rush by pressing the first person button and looking where you want to aim it before you do that dash. That's a really good thing I learned with this character. Whenever you get a kill with this character, your sprint speed just becomes extremely fast for a small duration of time. And if you attack, it makes you dash forward a little, but it uses some stamina. In my opinion, I think this killer is beginner friendly. He's really easy to play. He has a really strong stats, and he has a really good kit as well, considering his Silly Rush has a 4-second cooldown. Next up, we got Inkfell and his overly stretched images for some reason. Inkfell is obviously Bendy from Bendy and the Ink Machine from Joey Drew Studios. He has a sprint speed of 17, making him the slowest killer in the game. He has 45 damage per hit, and he has 125 stamina. His first ability is called Devil's Portal. You can spawn up to 6 portals on the map, and anyone who steps in a portal will get the ink debuff. With the ink debuff, they're highlighted on the map. If you're on top of a portal, you can press E to traverse through the portals. If you exit a portal, it would explode and deal a lot of damage and apply the ink debuff to anybody around it. Any portal that you exit despawns, and after you exit a portal, you get a speed boost for 2 seconds. Inkfell's next ability is Devil's Rage. You slam your hands down in an inky explosion, and it has a good amount of range in front of you. Anyone who gets hit is inked and takes damage. Using the Devil's Rage near a portal will cause the portal to explode, and using Devil's Rage when there's a player near a portal will also make that portal explode and deal damage to that player. The last ability is called Devil's Dive. You dive forward extremely fast for around 2 seconds, and anyone you touch gets the ink debuff, making them slower for you to catch up to them. In my opinion, this killer is intermediate. With his most recent buff, he is actually pretty strong, but he's still not too easy to play for a beginner. Of course, I'm not saying he's the hardest, though, because you can still get a grasp of him pretty easily. So I personally think he's intermediate, maybe even just not beginner friendly. Next up, we got PCX. PCX is based off of the Sonic.exe creepypasta, which has a history with its owners. I'm not going to get into that because that's not what I'm here for. He does 18 damage per hit. He has a sprint speed of 31, making him the fastest killer in the game. He has 35 stamina, and his first ability is called Found You. You turn invisible and you move extremely fast. You have the ability to fly up and down, and if you press it again, you show yourself and attempt to attack anybody that's near you. If you hit somebody, the player will fall down to the floor and you'll deal a good amount of damage. And if you use this ability, it drains your stamina, but that stamina can be refunded if you land the hit. His next ability is called God Unbound. You get increased movement speed and increased damage, but you also get slightly increased stamina drain. Hitting someone regenerates some of your stamina, and you cannot use Found You while this buff is active. His next ability is called Jump. You jump into the air and launch slightly forward. It lets you catch up to somebody, and if you land on somebody, you take a good amount of damage off of them. You also regenerate some stamina if you land the jump on somebody. There is also some end lag if you land the jump on somebody, so keep that in mind. His passive is called Final Act. If you're in a solo match and there's just one person left alive, you and the final player will be sent to the final act. If you catch the player, you just instantly kill them and the round ends. Both PCX and the player get insane speed boost, and they run really fast. In my opinion, MX is intermediate. He's not beginner friendly because he has 35 stamina and you need to know how to use his abilities, but at the same time he's really strong and can deal a crap ton of damage really fast. So I think he's intermediate and kind of just in the middle there to learn him. Last but not least, we got the newest killer in the game, Jeffrey Woods, or Jeff the Killer from the creepypasta, we all know. He does 25 damage per hit. He has a sprint speed of 23 and he has 90 stamina. His first ability is called Silent Stalker. You crouch down and silence your movement and chase theme completely. You also deal 70 damage to anybody that you hit while you're crouched in this state. Crouching near somebody will increase your rage meter, and once this is full, you can uncrouch and you just get an insane speed boost to catch up to whoever you're next to. You also get a small damage boost when you have your rage fully up. His last ability is called Maniacal Haste. You decrease your stamina drain and increase your attack speed for a long duration of time. You become extremely loud and easy to hear from far away, so keep that in mind as well, because it's really hard to catch up to somebody if you're in Maniacal Haste, because they can just hear you through walls and run away. If you kill somebody though, you increase the duration of this buff, but once the buff ends, you'll be locked in place for a few seconds. While you're close to somebody and you're crouching, they'll highlight them until they move away. And when you're using Maniacal Haste, you'll highlight anybody nearby you. In my opinion, Jeff the Killer is also intermediate, because while you can rack up easy kills while the match is going, once you get to that last player, you really got to know how to work with his kit. Otherwise, you're just not going to be able to catch that last person. So that's it for the Ultimate Monster Breakdown. I'm sorry for the dropped quality, and I'm also sorry for the late upload. Like I said, all my footage literally just disappeared, and on top of that, I had a lot of work to get done, so again, I'm really sorry. I did my best on this one, and I'd really appreciate it if you guys liked and subscribed. And also, again, make sure to go check out the Discord. It's for lots of things, for lots of fun, for anybody that just have fun. But with that, that's the end of the video. I really hope you guys enjoyed. Peace.